I am Dagan. I work for a digital distributor called Denmark, and I'm going to talk a little bit about digital distribution, which I've been working with since it began, actually, in the early 2000s. I've also, besides working as a digital distributor, I also have a independent label in Sweden called Novoton. And so I see both sides of this, and I've also been running labels since like the late 80s. So I've been through both the changes from vinyl to CD and back to vinyl again and into the digital realm. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about digital distribution and what I think it's important, because there is a lot of it's quite easy to get your music out onto the DSPs, to Spotify and everywhere else at the moment. There's quite a lot of distributors with different approach to it and payment methods and everything. But I think the most important thing as a label is to find a good distributor. And I also think if you're an independent label, independent artist, to find one that is truly independent as well, because there is a lot of fake independent distributors out there, because the majors have starting to buy out digital distributors and posing them as independent distributors. That happened because before I came to Denmark, I worked for Phonophile, which I was part owner of, and it was the biggest independent digital distributor in Scandinavia, or the Nordics. And unfortunately, that was bought by The Orchard, which is fully owned by Sony. And Universal have in Grooves and other similar things which they pose as independent distributors. And why I think it's problematic with that, everybody should of course work with whoever they want to work with, but the problem for us as an independent sector is that if the market share of those distribution, if you use The Orchard or In Grooves, for instance, the market share of that goes to the majors, and that makes them already stronger than they already are. And for us independents, it's important to have a counterpart or weight in it when we negotiate with Spotify, negotiate with all the importers. So a good digital distributors, and there's a lot of them out there, not just us, there's a lot of other good distributors out there. And for me, an independent. So the second thing we've been kind of nagging our labels since, I don't know, since we began actually, it's plan. A release. Last year, there was, I think, approximately about 60,000 new songs uploaded to Spotify and all the other DSPs per day. That's per day. And we're up to now, the last figure here is around 100,000 in 1 year. It's gone from 60,000 to around 100,000 songs a day. No, of course, not all those songs are new. It's a lot of back catalog being uploaded, but it's still 100,000 songs a day, which you have to compete with if you release your music. So if you haven't planned ahead, for us, if needed, we can have a song up to Spotify or the DSPs tomorrow, if we need to do it. But to what use? Okay, if it's a back catalog thing and it's not that important, fine, you can do that. But there's almost never that urgency to get a song up so quickly. So number one is plan. And not just because as a distributor, we do pitching, of course, towards the DSPs and trying to get the things we represent up on the playlists and everything like that. So that's one reason, because we need to have time to do that. And we recommend that you at least upload it, at least, that's kind of the latest 1 month before the release date. But I would recommend 2 or 3 months ahead if possible, because then we have time when we meet with Spotify, we meet with the other DSPs, and if we have the songs in advance, we can pitch them if we feel that they need to be pitched because we shouldn't let us fool ourselves either, because everything can't be pitched, of course, because if it's too small artists, and with this amount of music coming out every day, we have to select the things we really think could do good together with the label. And that's, if a label and the artists are doing their work properly, have planned ahead, they have a promotion plan in place, how to get the music out to the music media, to the fans and everything, then we can help on our end. So that's number one. Planning is, I think it's the most important thing. And a lot of people here in this territory, and I haven't lived here, but my parents are from Serbia, so I speak a little Serbian, and we were actually, with Phonophile, we were the first digital distributor who had an office in Belgrade. We started quite early, even before there were any DSPs, and then even before Deezer launched here in the Balkans. So I've been here, and a lot of people saying, can we get on the playlist, because there are any people here locally who are doing the local playlisting for like Balkans or whatever. But yes, we can, and we have done that. And because in Spotify there's a lot of like more generic playlisting, like coffee playlisting, chill out playlisting. There's other who aren't specific to an area, or that could be just indie pop playlisting. And if you have music and it's in English, your music could be on those playlists as easy as from anywhere else if it fits that playlist. So I think you should look into it. I mean, it's harder, of course, and I think when Spotify has only been here in Serbia at least for 2 years, I think it's something like that. And I think when they've been here in the region longer, I think they will have local playlisters doing more local playlisting as well. So it doesn't. It's a good thing to be prepared and to already be there when they start that. So that's it. Another thing which we actually have been nagging about is metadata, and most of you know what metadata is about, who wrote the song and things like that. And for us, I think metadata will become much, much more important in the future than it is now, because at the moment there's only like Tidal and Spotify who's showing some part of the metadata in towards the listeners. But I think that will spread, because I think a lot of the listeners would like to know who wrote which song and which other songs have that person. In Spotify, you can't, for instance, click on a songwriter. You can see who's wrote a song or something in Spotify, but you can't click and see which other songs they wrote. But I think in Tidal you can do that, and I think that will be in more stores in the future. And so in our system it's quite easy to enter. I think one of the reasons why labels haven't put in all the metadata I think they should do is because in some system it hasn't been that easy to do. But it is with us, and we always recommend write everything down, because if you're uploading a new release today, it will probably take you like tops 3 minutes more to enter both the songwriters and the lyricists. You have to write anyway. That's a requirement from the stores. But write who's playing on the song, which instrument they're playing, because you have it in your head now. It's a new release. You know exactly. In 2, 3, 4 years time down the line, you won't remember exactly who was doing what on each song. So I think a metadata, even if it's not that important at the moment, I think it will become much more important. And I think just for acknowledging who were on a song, I think that's an important thing in having everything guarded in one place, so you know that. So that is one thing. And for the metadata is also actually quite important in one other DSP or outlet, which is quite important here in this region, and that is YouTube. Because Google and YouTube, on a personal point of view, I think they suck because they pay way too little. But that's a sidebar. But they're still important, and it is a DSP that we see is growing in revenue as well. There's coming more and more money from that. But they have a system. If you don't enter all the correct metadata on their songs, you're going to get paid even less. A lot of people don't know this. So if you haven't entered the ISRC code, songwriters on when you upload on your YouTube channels, you're going to get less than those who have uploaded all the metadata correctly. And I know a lot of people doesn't know this, and that could be quite a lot of money if for instance, I know for us in the Nordics, YouTube has never been that important because they never made it. But since YouTube was here and used as a way of listening to music before the Spotify and Deezer and they came, they're still quite important here. And I see even indie bands here in this region are getting much more views on Spotify than quite big artists in Sweden, for instance. So I think that's one other impact of the metadata thing. It's just for YouTube. So keep an eye on that, and that's just a recommendation. I actually didn't know this because until this year myself, because as I said, YouTube hasn't been that important for us in Sweden. So if we get a couple of dollars more, it didn't matter for us. But for this region, and because we now have a really good YouTube guy in Hamburg who's handling, or we have a YouTube team there in Hamburg, but who's handling specifically YouTube and monetizing the streaming from that. So planning and metadata is two important things. But also with this amount of songs being uploaded every day, one more important thing is to look outside of the DSPs, because a lot of discussions to be, how do we get on the playlists, and everybody wants to be on the playlist, and that's fine. You can get some bucks from being on a playlist, but what you don't get almost certainly as an artist is recognition, because people don't know who you are. They're just putting on something in the background like a radio, and they put on a playlist and it's going, and you can see that in some places. You can see like one artist having a couple of millions or even more streams on one song, and then just have thousands on the other songs. And that probably means, for me, as knowing the statistic, that means that that song has been added to a quite big or a couple of bigger playlists. But it hasn't transferred people getting to the artist's page and listening to other music. They're just listening to that song because it's on the playlist. So the other important thing is, as an artist, as labels, to be out there and building the true fan base of an artist, and trying to draw the real fans in to listen to the music, because that's how you grow, I think. And you get a lot of followers on Spotify, and because when you have a lot of followers on Spotify, and you do pitching, if you have verified your artist profile on Spotify, which I think all artists should do if they're active, then you pitch through your artists for Spotify for artists as well. And when you have a big following there, or a lot of listeners, then they will get at least, even if that song isn't placed in any playlist, it will be placed in the release radar and Discover Weekly on those who are following you, which means if there are quite a lot following you, you will get a surge in the beginning anyway. So that's why I think it's important to do that. But out there, building your fan base and the old traditional way, gigging, I mean, it is hard, but you have to do it, because otherwise it will become even harder, because if you don't get some movement, doing the traditional promo wherever you can, radios, and everything contributes to building the fan base. And I think that's, as an artist, that's where you should look. How you do it, you have to find a way that works for you. I mean, some artists have done really good through TikTok, and even like we have this, I think they're from Belarus, Molchat Doma, which is quite independent and quite hard synth band, who's done really good through their song being spread on TikTok. And there's quite few other artists who've done good on TikTok. So if that works for you, that could be a way to explore. We've seen TikTok as one place right now who's been driving traffic but that doesn't work for all artists. But if it does for you, you have to, as an artist, I think you have to find a way to do it which is the best way for you to do it, actually. But I think probably that's the most important thing, because the other things are like just planning and having a fair amount of time before release and everything like that. But building your fan base, it's a harder thing, and it will probably take a longer time. But when you have done that, you are not kind of dependent on being put on playlists, you have your fan base. And I think that was how it was before, because as I said, I've been doing this for quite a long time, and suddenly when the streaming economy came, and everybody, after a couple of years, everybody just focused to get music into the playlist. And another thing for me, which is, I think it's most sadly with the focus on playlisting, is that it has kind of created a little bit more generic type of music, because people notice that if you're not that edgy or whatever, it's easier to get your music into some playlist, which it is, of course. But it also for me, who always loved the edgy music, which is what I enjoy, it will, of course, always be there. But I think even some of the edges are polished off, even in the more commercial, so it becomes more and more generic. So I hope that this will change, that something new will come. I mean, I don't know what it will be, but it always does. I've been here, as I said, from vinyl to CD, back to vinyl now again, but into the digital. And when we started, it was just downloads, and then it was streaming. And I think things will happen during the 5-10 next years that kind of changes this, and I hope it is. I know the whole independent sector, and they talked about it at Impala seminar just before here. They're working hard to get more value to the artist, because as it is now, the artist is getting the shortest straw in the whole streaming economy, and hopefully we will change that. And we as an independent sector, we just have to work towards that, of course, and that's why I think it's so important to stay within the independent sector, so we are strong and big when we negotiate with all the DSPs. Otherwise, we'll be in the hands of the majors, and I can quite 100% assure you we don't want to be that, especially if they kind of get a monopoly, which they almost have anyway, because they're so big. They're getting so much money from their back catalogs, which are huge, and they're buying all catalog they can. Anyway, so on that note, stay independent is important. But if you have any questions, feel free. I think otherwise I've gone through the important, yeah?
Yes, hello, my name is Marco.
Yeah.
I research with a friend, we have a podcast that
Yeah.
we work with a lot of local artists as well, mostly hip-hop music.
Yeah.
And we always talk about the importance of creating a fan base
Yeah.
and making music that you really like a lot and enjoy
Yeah.
as an artist. And then doing more albums, singles nowadays, because I think another, how would I say, anomaly that we have created is that organizations is that a lot of artists are focusing on singles, spending a lot of money on video,
Yeah.
but they don't have enough content and enough music to build a fan base. So I wanted to ask you, can you talk more about the creating fan base point, because I think it's maybe the most important thing. And how can we add on the streaming services aside from there? For example, how important is new media, the online media, the podcast, new ways of communicating,
Yeah.
social media, and everything else? Is it important, and what is the best, let's say, rollout model for an artist when they drop a
Yeah.
new album or a new
Yeah.
release?
You're totally correct. One thing I haven't talked about at all is the change from albums to singles and EPs and singles more and more, because what the streaming economy has kind of created is that you have to be quite active as an artist. If you want to all the time get playlisted, you have to release new singles, and so for now it's not unusual that an artist release like 6 singles before then they collect everything to an album, which is only 2 more songs or something like that. So that's quite usual to do. And I'm a little bit divided on that, actually, because for some artists I think it could be a good thing doing. I myself love albums because I'm from that era, and if you have created an album that is an album, then fine. But just gathering like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks, which hasn't made to be like a together thing, then I think you could easily just let them be singles out there. And I think when you create an EP or an album, do it as an EP and album. And then, of course, you can take 1, 2, 3 tracks from it and start building a hype around it and releasing them as singles before. But if you haven't created an album, then I think let it be. Just release the and I think since you're doing the hip hop thing, we can see that in almost all territories. Some of the biggest genre is the urban music. In Sweden, in Europe, everywhere, hip-hop is a strong thing, even some ragga things like that. So it seems to be a genre which people like to listen. Another is the dance, techno, or electronic music. It's also something that a lot of people are listening to. And even the singer-songwriter thing, it goes a little bit up and down and sideways, but it seems like that's always kind of been a strong genre. But I think as an artist, you have to just decide which way you want to go. We should just do a lot of singles. I have actually a son of a cousin of mine in Belgrade, MC Stoyan, who's doing the hip hop, and he's actually a relative to me. And they're doing just songs and videos, and they're just out to party, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do, it is fine. And I think they've done a quite good job. They put a lot of money into the videos, and they also get a lot of views for the video. So yeah, I think what's have been a kind of shortage is that the artists haven't laid down a plan what they want to do, and they could do it themselves or together with the label. But I think it's important to lay down a plan what we want to achieve with the music we're making, because it's much easier to then work with it if you have made the plan. And I think that's an important thing, actually. Yeah.
My name is Kaicha.
Yeah.
I work with Dr.
Yeah.
As you said. So I wanted to follow up on something that you said regarding playlists. Because playlists, let's say, because we're in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty regional.
Yeah.
Spotify and the other streaming services haven't done a step through.
Yeah.
Haven't made an impact.
No.
In this region, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, more of the playlists that are, as you said, they're not going to give you any kind of recognition. They might give you some streams.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, I have managed an artist of mine, a friend of mine actually, which I have uploaded music to Spotify to, and it doesn't make a difference. I have tried with the playlist, I have placed him on a couple of playlists. Those songs do have considerably more streams per se, but they're not the most popular one because they do not contribute to your fan base.
No.
Basically. So they do attribute to more streams,
Yeah.
but that's just a number. It's not a real one because they do not contribute toward the fan base. Those are not people that can actually come to a show of yours and support
No.
you in any kind of way. So my question was like, because this is the new step, visual distribution and streaming is the new way to go.
Yeah.
Every artist is placing their songs on Spotify and every other streaming service, but is this actually the way to go and create a fan base per se? Like, can Spotify be used for more regional artists or more local artists?
I think it can. Yeah, I think it can be, but maybe not through Spotify. We had actually this issue, and you say no, there's no playlisting. I think what you should do, that could be your podcast, start creating regional playlists in different genres, and try to build them, because those kind of playlists, people who are following those kind of playlists are more inclined to know what artists they are listening to. Because we had this actually, and in Sweden there's a genre called dansband, which is a really badly regarded. It's a huge popular. It's kind of some very generic country-ish music, which people go out and dance to. Older people, now even younger people, but it's not regarded in like artistic kind of view, but it is a huge genre. And some 6-7 years ago, Spotify, even though, I mean, the first playlisting started in Sweden, they didn't have any playlist in that genre. So one of the bigger labels actually started creating his own playlist, which became huge because there weren't other. Spotify didn't do it, and that this is in Sweden. So he started creating dansband playlists with his artists and the other bigger artists. And the important thing is, he was a label, but he understood that it was important for him to put other big artists in this genre, even if they weren't on his label, to make these playlists valid and good. And that's an important thing to if you're doing this, you could even add European or American hip-hop things, which kind of vibe with what the playlist is doing. But I think you should do it, because that also, and when Spotify saw this, of course, then they have actually taken over his playlist later down the line because they saw how much following he got. And I think if you create good playlists here, that will make them understand that they need to put some people to create regional playlisting as well.
That's what.
Yeah.
That's what started with playlists.
Yes.
That's how we started. Actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Creating playlists.
Yeah. Just keep doing that. I think that's an important thing.
Find a way to go, especially those playlists, especially the one in the Macedonian.
Yeah.
We'll find a way to go it now.
Yes. So I don't know. I probably have been over time. I don't know how long I'm supposed to do this, but I never keep track on time. So if does anyone else had? No, I think I'm probably just on track. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. It's probably being videoed. So. Yeah, my parents are from not far from here in a small village outside of Vranje, in Sweden. Yeah, I was 3 years when my parents moved to Sweden, so I'm yeah, fortunately for me, of course. But so for me, it's kind of, I feel Swedish in a way because I've grown up in Sweden, gone through schools. The previous company we had, Fonophile, we actually had an office in Belgrade. Unfortunately, our Fonophile was bought by The Orchard, so I'm not working there anymore. And very unfortunately, the guy, Dejan, who was our guy in Belgrade, died during the COVID. Yeah, Ammonite. Yeah, very unfortunate. He was a good friend, but yeah. So yeah, and we're Denmark, which I work for now. We're here and trying to find people to work with because I'm here anyway, and I like this region, and a lot of the music I grew up with, like in the late 70s, early 80s, I noticed actually because I had a period from like 81 to when I wasn't here at all. During the whole of the conflict, I wasn't here for at least 15 years or even 20 years, I think it was almost. So when I started to getting back here, I noticed how much I missed it, but also I found some records which I bought in the early 80s here, and remember how important those records was for me and the music I like and doing so.
Third music market worldwide regarding ex-Yugoslavia.
Yeah, I think for me, probably after England, the best post-punk scene in the whole world, actually. So, but yeah, so yeah, I'm here and I've been coming more and more now, actually. So I'm trying to be here in Belgrade. I am probably 4 or 5 times a year in Belgrade anyway, just visiting relatives and labels and so on. So yeah. So if we don't have any more questions, thank you. And if you have some questions and see me out there, just give me a shout. Thanks.